This is our final panel of the night. To wrap it all up, we have the spectacular Lisa Graves, and she is joined by Marge Baker. And Marge Baker is the Executive Vice President for Policy and Program at the People for the American Way, which was founded in '81, as you all know, by Norman Lear and the late Congresswoman Barbara Jordan. And at PFAW, Ms. Baker oversees the work on policy and programs, including the campaigns on the courts and nominations, LGBT equality, voting rights, and elections. She has worked for nearly 30 years in various public service roles, and prior to joining PFAW, she was the staff director for the late Senator Paul Wellstone on the Senate's Employment, Safety, and Training Subcommittee. She's a graduate of Yale Law School, has served as a law clerk in the federal judiciary and as counsel on the Senate Judiciary Committee, and is head of the Consumer Protection for a state regulatory agency. Please welcome Lisa Graves and Marge Baker. Thank you so much.
Well, I just have to say, this has been an amazing day, and I know we've got to not have a bunch of ado, but we really appreciate Mary Beth for putting this together, and there were a lot of iterations of this and a lot of really meaty, interesting issues that have come up, both on the statutory front, the idea of dealing with the nominations, the idea of dealing with the public finance front, the idea of the constitutional amendment, various parts of the Constitution. We had a new amendment unveiled, in essence, today from Derek, our new ideas of part of the amendment, and so we wanted to have a chance to sort of wrap up and give you at least our perspective on sort of where things are on the amendment front. So you all, there's a whole stack of these here, but and this is available electronically at prwatch.org. But we've actually gone through and taken Greg Colvin's questions about the types of questions that an amendment should answer, or that you should perhaps consider knowing the answer to if you're going to assess a constitutional amendment. Greg has written about that on the CAF site as well as on PR Watch, my website, and he's given a lot of thought to it. And I think with his expertise, quite frankly, from being a lawyer in the nonprofit world, when a lot of this there's election law, there's nonprofit law, there's corporate law, there's an intersection of the constitutional law, but Greg has thought a lot about these questions. Does this, for instance, does this amendment take effect immediately or not? Is that something that matters to you when you're looking at an amendment? Does this amendment, how does this amendment treat for-profit corporations? Does it treat them the same as nonprofits? Does that matter to you or not? Do you want them to be treated the same? How does this amendment treat unions? And I should say, we do have Communications Workers of America in the House. Is he here? Yes, please. I wanted to, Shane is here, and I wanted to give a special recognition to Shane because, as someone mentioned, and I'll please forgive me for who, the way the Supreme Court framed the Citizens United decision, the way the Supreme Court framed the Citizens United decision was to try to suggest, in essence, that unions and corporations are the same in terms of spending and their role in elections. And in fact, I think that there are some significant differences. But it is true that unions, through the special determination of some of their members, have had money that their members elect to give to be involved in protecting workers' rights, which is really, in many ways, very distinct from the way corporations have been involved without, in essence, the consent, in many instances, of either their shareholders or, certainly, and their consumers in many respects. And in fact, unions are the most regulated body in the election process. They report through the Department of Labor and other things. And so when the decision was issued, Citizens United, I think that there was in part, a tactical decision on the part of the Supreme Court, and I'm a legal realist, so I don't have a lot of deference for the Supreme Court, quite frankly. But to try to pit unions and corporations together, and to try to cleave them from any effort to resolve this decision by saying it's going to be you, people who want to fix this, versus the unions and corporations, and it cannot be done. And so the fact that Communication Workers of America is here, they were really the first to step up and say, we are so concerned about our democracy that we, a union, in the midst of this debate and this discourse, we will put our name on the line and say we too agree that the Citizens United decision must be overturned. And so I just want to say, again, Shane, and to you, all of your workers in the union, thank you very much for that leadership. So I'm not going to go through this 32-page document. Miles, I promise I'm not going to go through the 32-page document. But I do want to commend it to you because and there will obviously be other amendments. It's incomplete right now. It doesn't have Derek's latest amendment, and there will be others that will be coming, and so we'll be updating those online at PR Watch, and Greg will be, I'm sure, helping us to assess those in terms of what do they do or not do. But I would commend this document to you if you are interested in language, in the specificity of language, and many of you are. And in fact, in our focus group, one of the concerns was some of the questions were very abstract, and without looking at amendment language, am I for this without seeing the language, or am I against it? Some of the questions are abstract, I think, and there's value at this stage of the conversation, of the national debate, for there to be a certain level of abstraction. And at the same time, there are lots of ways on the Hill in Congress that things are not abstract. There are actual amendments that have been proposed. They have actual potential effects. They have consequences. They probably indeed have unintended consequences. And so we wanted to make sure that this was part of the conversation. At the same time, there was a desire on the part of the organizers to not get into a whole day sort of debate about this amendment versus that amendment versus this amendment on this. This will help you if you are interested in looking at it, in helping to evaluate that and what matters to you. And I also think it's important to point out that in this packet is an amendment by Move to Amend, who has not been represented on the panels here. And I know that there are people in this audience and online who've been very active in the Move to Amend coalition. It's a really powerful coalition of organizations and individuals that has really moved on these amendments, along with Common Cause, along with Mary Beth's work in Los Angeles, along with People for the American Way, the work by Public Citizen, the work by a whole host of organizations. But I wanted to make sure to give a special shout out to them because they haven't had the floor, in essence, up here. And they do represent hundreds of thousands of Americans in terms of their petition where people have signed on to Move to Amend. But they're not the only organization. There's a whole range of organizations that are involved, and we heard some of that work from Professor Lessig and Trevor Potter and others that are afoot and that are moving to do something. But we wanted it to basically come back to this, I guess, the core question that in essence stems or follows on the panel that Miles put together about this question of corporate rights, of the question of constitutional rights, of having a constitutional solution. From my perspective, I would say to you that given the research that we've done and observed with the nonprofit groups, the 501c3, C4, C5, C6s, given what we've seen with the amount of individual spending, not just corporate spending from the corporate treasury, but wealthy individuals, that I think we need and must have a constitutional solution to the problems that have been caused by a constitutional decision by the Supreme Court. I think that there are a lot of good statutory things that can and should be done. I think this court is extremely activist. They have a very solid majority of 5 on everything but disclosure, where they have indicated a willingness to support disclosure as a constitutional matter, but on the core question of regulating our elections. In essence, what they did was say that Congress shall have no power to regulate elections the way they tried to do it through the McCain-Feingold Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act, which was actually a very carefully constructed law to try to protect some of the interests of nonprofits when they're acting as genuine nonprofits, but to say if they're, for instance, running ads 60 days before the election, we're going to assume they may be trying to influence the election, and other rules ought to apply. And those rules ought to require disclosure of who's bankrolling that. That in essence, that power was struck. But it's not just Citizens United. As the professors this morning pointed out, there are other decisions that came before that. There's decisions that have come subsequent to that. There is a problem in the judiciary, I would submit to you, in which the judiciary is signaling a disrespect and a lack of deference to the will of the people in a democracy, in a representative democracy. And that's an enormous crisis and problem. So before I turn over to Marge to talk about United for the People and what's afoot and coming, I would just say there are amendments that have been introduced in Congress in this packet. There are also Greg Colvin has 2 amendments that are in here that take two different but related approaches to considering these questions, including the amendment about having a dollar limit that is a calculation for how much money you can give in races that would basically rescale the electoral process. In our small group, focus group, some people were concerned, like, what would the limit be? These are very detailed questions, but if we're going to solve this problem, at some point we're going to have some detailed conversations. And so one of our hopes today was to give you some of the tools to start thinking about, and if you've already been thinking about them, to start expanding your conception and openness, or perhaps closeness, as the case may be, to possibilities. Like you would think about, there really is a very complex problem, but there's no doubt, from my standpoint, there's no doubt no matter how complex this problem is in certain ways, for me, it is absolutely something we must solve, or we are going to lose our democracy even worse than we've already been contending with. It is a problem that must be solved. And could you please read your T-shirt? Could someone read it for her?
Determine that the thing can and shall be done, and then we shall find the way.
Right.
Abraham Lincoln.
Okay, so I know it was a T-shirt, but it just struck me because it's Abraham Lincoln. And he's a Republican, and if I would be a Republican if back then, you know? In my professional capacity, I'm neither. But Abraham Lincoln, the first Republican, the great man, he said, determine that a thing shall and must be done, and then? And we shall find a way. And so Marge Baker, who I'm pleased to be on this panel, has been helping to find a way through developing and working with a constellation of groups, including many of the groups that have been represented here today, to find common ground to advance this conversation forward and trying to not get into fights among groups, to try to find that common ground, because we're at the beginning of a movement and we need to join arms. And as Jeff Clement said, perhaps the ask should be to the members, support all the amendments for now. Signal that we need a constitutional amendment, just support them all for now until we can figure it out. Or maybe support the ones you want, but do something about this. So I'm going to stop now and give the floor to Marge.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much for everything that you've done, really. And looking at the clock, I'll be brief. This has been a very, very long day, and I do want to talk just a minute about 2 things, about the movement moment that we're in and some of the principles that we're using to try to operate in that moment, we and our allies, so that we can advance getting things done, moving ahead. But first, I have to celebrate the folks who pulled this together. Miles and Mary Beth, and I know assisted by Greg and by Lisa and Anjali. This was an incredible, incredible, incredible day. And
Michelle.
And Michelle, I'm sorry. I knew if I did that, I was gonna not mention something. But it's important for any number of reasons. But we're here on a Saturday, after my guess is people are really burned out from being through a pretty heavy-duty election season, right? I understand there's a football game today too. Not that anybody cares about that. And you're still here. It's almost 6 o'clock, and you're still here. And this is so important because I think it was Miles who suggested on his panel that those of us who are really concerned about fixing this problem, and it's not just Citizens United, the problem started before Citizens United, but Citizens United really crystallized it. I know it crystallized it for our organization and for many people that I talk to. There was a possibility that people would take a look at the election and say, big money didn't win, it's not a problem, so we don't have to worry. And the fact that this many people in 2 rooms are spending their whole day here talking about this important issue is such important validation, if nothing more, that not just that the problem is serious and that we are committed to dealing with this serious problem, and that we are in a movement moment and we are not going to be deterred. We are going to get this done. So it's really, really important in that respect, and I want you all should give yourself a hands for being here and for participating. It's just been awesome. And the other point I want to make is it's not just that you are here. The level of discussion, the level of debate, the level of really serious discourse about how to solve these problems is really exceptional. I've been to a lot of events on this subject. I have never been to an event that more thoroughly, more deeply, more authentically, more honestly engaged the speakers and the participants about these really tough questions that all too often have divided us, and instead we're united in trying to grapple with these problems. It's really, really, really important. And that's part of what Lisa mentioned, that there's a constellation of organizations. I just counted, went on the website. We've come together loosely under the banner called United for the People, United #4thepeople.org. There's 135 organizations. We've come together under the principle that there's no controlling group, right? And we're not organizing around any single particular result that we're trying to achieve. We're organizing around the fact that we all believe that we need to deal with Citizens United through amending the Constitution. We also, some of us believe that other things should be done. It's not excluding that. But the one principle that unites these 135 organizations that have literally tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of members around the country, is that we believe this problem is so serious that we need a constitutional remedy, or remedies. And I think one of the real ahas for me was the fact that, you know, this may take a couple of amendments, and that may be a really a totally legitimate and effective way to proceed. And the other thing that's really important. Okay, so two really, I know we've got it. Don't want to take too long. So two really important things. One, this is a movement moment, and it's because of people in the room like you. But let me just give you some numbers. That since Citizens United decision came down, 11 states have passed resolutions, 2 of which have called for constitutional remedies, 2 of which have been through ballot initiatives, so every citizen in the state voted on it. There's over 300 local resolutions passed in 32 states, so that number 38 that we need to get, 32 states have at least had one or 2 localities or more, many more, in localities in that state who have grappled with the issue and said, their elected body has said we need a constitutional amendment. There's 14 amendments introduced in the 112th Congress, supported by 29 senators and 96 representatives. Thousands, literally thousands of public officials have signed on to the principle that we need constitutional remedies. And this is not happening top down. This is not happening because some organizational leaders said. This is happening because the grassroots is calling for it. It's happening because in city and city and city around the country, people are saying enough is enough. We have to deal with this problem. We want to go on record. And it's not the end, but it is the beginning, and it's where the organizing needs to go. And the life that was given to this movement by the Occupy absolutely you can't understate how important that was and how much really heroic, galvanizing. I know from it changed. It really changed. It changed the landscape in a really fundamental way. So this is happening. This is happening because the people want it to happen. So that's what I really want to make sure that I'm in a national organization. That's my role. But we have many members, and I'm speaking here not as the head of an organization. I'm speaking for my members who demanded that our organization embrace this issue. So one's a movement moment and embrace that, and really what we need to do is figure out how to keep it moving. Okay, so really quickly, there's 3 guiding principles that we're trying to operate by, and then they're my checklist for how to make things happen. One is, and we were modeling this today, don't be divided by what we disagree about, be empowered by what we agree on, and understand that the debate about what we disagree on validates the fact that we're working on a really important issue. The fact that we are in debate, the fact that we don't know what the amendment should look like, the fact that we're talking about it and having serious debate about it means that it's real and it's not going to go away, because we care enough to sit in a room all day and talk about it and debate about it, and it's happening around the country. So one is, focus on what we agree on and be motivated by the fact that we are talking about what we disagree on to move us forward. That's one really, really important thing. And the second is, don't be siloed. We heard about it a little bit in the presentation of the last panel, but think this movement, whether it is to deal with corporate rights, or whether it's in corporate power, whether it's also to deal with the problem of too much money in politics, or whether it's to deal with sort of political equality as opposed to just dealing with corruption. However we frame the issue, there's a whole nother set of related issues out there that another set of organizations, some of them overlapping, are dealing with, and it's the fact that too many people are being kept from voting. The voter suppression problem is real. I think it came up during Derek's presentation. Voter ID, getting rid of early voting, making it impossible for provisional ballots to be counted. Those are all really, really serious problems. And what we have been doing, sort of the United for the People cluster of organizations, have been intentionally reaching out to organizations like the NAACP, for example, who embrace constitutional remedies, but are also fiercely fighting for addressing the problem of voter suppression, and trying to figure out how we can bridge, how we can work together and see that what we're dealing with collectively is the larger threats to our democracy. And one of the things by happenstance, the 3rd anniversary of Citizens United, January 21st, is also MLK Day. It's also Martin Luther King holiday. It's also the public inauguration day. And so what we have done is kind of wrestled with that, and there's no command coming down. It's just that a number of organizations are talking about making Saturday, January 19th, a national day of action. So that in years past, last year, around 2nd anniversary, I think there were like 350 really incredible demonstrations around the country. Occupy was very involved. There's Move to Amend was managing and Occupy the courts. They were doing protests in 100, I think, locations around the country. There's a real desire to do something this year, and what we've talked about doing, and you just might want to put it on your calendar, think about it, take it back to your community and talk about it, is doing a National Day of Action on the 19th of January, which is in advance of, it's not on the official day, but it's complicated to do it on the official day. But what we're trying to do is really try to figure out how to do this so that under some sort of meta messaging that we are working on, dealing with the Citizens United agenda of problems, dealing with the voter empowerment needs, dealing also, and I just want to nod to CWA, because they've been, Communications Workers of America, have been very engaged in leading the struggle to deal with the issue of the impasse in the Senate and the need to deal with the problems of the Senate rules and the filibustering and the real problem that we're gridlocked. And so the cluster of organizations that's talking about doing work is trying to lift up all these issues and say, we need our democracy back. We need government of, by, and for the people. We need it to work. And we need to work hard at removing the impediments, whether it's obstruction in Congress, whether it's a Citizens United cluster of problems, whether it's voter suppression. And we're going to come together and try to embrace all of these issues. And what's happening is it's like building it out. It's building out this collaboration. It's building out this movement to really take back our government of, by, and for the people. So I just wanted to put that on the radar screen. It's something that you might want to think about. We're trying right now. We're really working on how do have the messaging that really works for all of us, so we can talk about this in a way that really resonates. And so we'll more and more come. Will be available. And then the last point, my last point. So when I do this, my guiding principle is don't be divided by what we disagree on. Be motivated by what we can agree on. And okay, and don't be silent. Understand that we're not in this alone. We're in this struggle with other organizations fighting for democracy. And the last thing is my Paul Wellstone, who was not just my boss but my mentor, always used to say, when we were in a hard fight, he said, you know what? You need to start a fight to win a fight. And that's, for me, what this is. We are starting a fight, because if we don't start it, we won't win it. And so I just want to thank everybody for letting me participate today. I really appreciate it. And sorry I went so long, but
no, that's okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marge. This is too high. So I just want to thank everybody for coming today. It's been an absolutely amazing day. I want to thank all the incredible speakers. And I want to thank Kathy Mayorkas from UCLA. And I really just want to say, myself in closing, I think we're at an amazing moment right now. I think that this movement that we're part of is actually a movement that has the potential to transform our country, to mobilize millions of people. And I think that this effort to amend the Constitution and to pass this legislation is actually going to transform us and change us. And we will build the kind of participatory democracy that we're all dreaming about. And then all the issues that we really want to solve that are so important for us to solve, this will actually give us the capacity, not only legally, but just, I think, in terms of mobilizing us as one nation to be able to solve those problems. And the other thing I wanted to say is, personally, I'd rather get it done sooner rather than later. And I know I hear about, 20 years or whatever. Okay, well, I don't know. Maybe we just are less patient now than they might have been like way back when. But so we want to throw out a challenge to all of our panelists, experts, and all of the activists, the millions of people out there. How can we be clean by 16? So in other words, how can we get this done so that by November 2016, our democracy will no longer be for sale, and we'll be back in charge of our government, and we'll have the whole new system, all those fantastic things that we talked about, the publicly financed and the constitutional amendment, all of it will be in place by 2016. So I know that T-shirt says just basically say you're going to do it, just like putting on a conference like this. You say you're going to do it, and then once you said it, then you got to do it. So that's actually going to be the focus of our next conference. Is going to be, we haven't set the date, but now that I set it out right now, that means we're going to have to do it, which is in the spring. And we want to brainstorm with everybody who we should have. One of the people I'm thinking is Jim Messina. If anybody knows him, he did the Obama 2012 campaign. Okay, we need some kick-ass campaign directors. We need this to be a campaign every bit as real as the presidential campaign to take back control of our government. So we want to bring people together for that conference, and we need all the people to help us and brainstorm. So we're going to have a meeting on a local level 2 weeks from today, December 1st. We're going to figure out where. We don't want everybody to have to pay $11 for parking, so it probably won't be here. But, and start to, organize locally and on a larger level to figure out how we can achieve this and be clean by 16. And, I pitched this to one of the nonprofits, and they're like, oh, no, you can't do a time frame. It's like, what if you fail? And I thought, hey, well, what if we fail? What do I have to lose? I mean, it's like, I don't have any reputation to uphold. I can say, let's do this by 2016, and you know what? If we don't do it, then okay, 2018, okay? So, I mean, clean by 18, that's not so bad. But I think if we could set the goal and we could actually figure out, in the next 4 years, what is it going to take? 2014 elections, can we overturn, all the people who don't support an amendment and don't support legislation and get them out of office and get our people into office? So we need to start right away. So that's why we're having the meeting in 2 weeks. But anyway, that's the challenge, and I just want to invite everybody. We have a reception with the guests outside over there, and we also want you to write on the wall, and there's a wall over here to write on, and we want you to pick up your trash, and oh, the scroll of the straw poll will be in the reception room. So in
this room during the reception.
Oh, we have to come back in here to see it?
Yeah.
Okay. Get some drinks, come back, see the straw poll, have some fun, mingle with the guests, and thank you all so much for coming today.